Hey guys, just checking I'm live on YouTube. I'm live on Facebook and YouTube. I'm focusing on the Facebook screen, however, Meta or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's difficult to know which one to start with sometimes because which one to focus on at the start because it's hard to know which one will upload more quickly. I normally like to focus on one screen. But anyway, it's your boy M.K.S here, back in another video, and welcome to part 2 of my plans, goals, aims, objectives, dream, or whatever you want to call them, for December. I hope you enjoy them. And obviously this is a brief synopsis, if you like, that's a big word for me, of my plans. So as I say, I hope you enjoy them. Just trying to think if there's something else I could say for the intro. As I think what I was going to say is I hope to focus on, I hope to have like dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and record general disability December. So for November I was focusing on just on neurodiversity more generally. I was thinking I'm probably not going to focus too much on like other forms of neurodiversity, but then again they could come under disability, so it could be about disabled empowerment, and I guess you could class neurodivergent conditions, even like dyslexia, as a disability in many ways, although they are made into a disability by society's rules and limitations and the way they teach or don't know how to teach us properly or whatever. Yeah, going for like D for December and that kind of thing. So yeah, as I say, I hope you enjoy my random ramblings or whatever, or whatever you want to call them. Because they're not completely random, but anyway. So yeah, I think that covers the intro. So these are pointers number 11 to 20. I'm just thinking, I hope I don't forget anything. I have to think I'll be kicking myself later if I forgot anything. But yeah, one more time. These are pointers number 11 to 20. And I always try and do this, but when I say it, it's almost like it jinxes it. But hopefully, I'll stick to just saying dyslexia for short. But really, I mean like covering all those conditions, or I'll say dyslexia and all those other conditions I talked about. That begin with D, or even disability generally included. So here goes. I'll try not to raffle too much if I can help it. I hope I can get to a point as quickly as possible, so please bear with me. But as ever, please let me know what you think. I hope you share the videos, like the videos, and subscribe to my Facebook if you can, if you're new, or whatever. And please support a struggling dyslexic YouTuber or YouTube wannabe. I really appreciate that. Could be an early Christmas gift as well. But anyway, here goes. So number 11, I love to change perceptions around dyslexia and think what dyslexic, and again all those other groups that I mentioned before, would change about society, the world, themselves, or whatever it might be, their families or whatever. So there's things like what I wish my teacher would know, like maybe a dyslexic person struggling in the classroom and puts the effort in or whatever, but just doesn't see the results, or whatever it might be. And that might be different for different individuals. Another thing I was thinking about, I actually said this in the opposite order, I was actually thinking of it in, but I thought I'd say it while I remember, but I think of point number 11 as like change, like the number 11 as change, making changes and that kind of thing. So I was thinking about how inventions change the world, and history, I'm sure many dyslexic inventions have changed the world. It'll be interesting to find out about them to inspire others. So with momentum, it can inspire more people with dyslexia. But I'd love for more dyslexics to be encouraged to create inventions that can help people, whether that's people with disabilities or people generally, the poor, or people with problems generally, or whatever. And again, changing the thinking around dyslexia. Another thing I was thinking of, actually, before I move on to point number 12, a little bit behind schedule, but or even a fair bit behind schedule. But I was thinking, like, if something is already valuable, this is how a simple way I think of like supply and demand. And I think I've understood more about that, and I'm understanding more about supply and demand and whatnot. But if something is quite valuable and it's rare, the rarer it is, the more valuable it will be, generally speaking, depending on the supply and the demand. If you increase the supply, the demand will be less valuable, or the demand demand will be met more easily. So therefore, you have to lower the price, for instance. So the fact that dyslexics think outside the box and think differently, basically, therefore think differently, therefore think out of the box. Perhaps that would be a better order to put in. We have strengths and things like that are really good. You could argue they're even better than neurotypical or non-dyslexic people in some ways, or in many ways even. Although we have a lot of weaknesses as well, to be fair. But yeah, changing the perception and thinking around dyslexia. I'd love for people from China, India, and the rest of Asia and Africa as well to learn about the strengths of dyslexia, and even like Latin America, and see what we can do to help developing nations, emerging market economies. I think like China and India could grow their economies even more if they just utilize the strengths of dyslexics, and probably other things as well. But dyslexic can see out of the box, think of new and innovative ideas, and things like mind strengths, MIND, an acronym, that kind of thing, for I think it's mastery, interconnected reasoning, narrative reasoning, like storytelling or whatever, narrative thinking or whatever, and I can't remember, daydreaming or something. I can't quite remember, but anyway. So yeah, they might see a dyslexic struggling in the classroom, but we can still do well in other areas. So maybe the next Richard Branson or Charles Schwab or John Chambers or Craig McCall or people like that could be a dyslexic in a classroom in India or something like that. But if they're given the opportunities, they can do it a lot better. And there's certain areas we're stronger at, like Simon Squibb. I don't know, overextend this point perhaps. I'm going to move on to point number 12. As a Simon Squibb, I was going to say in point number 11, but I think I'll say in point number 12 to move the video along. But Simon Squibb, a dyslexic entrepreneur, said about like in school, he struggled with and probably hated reading or writing, but they made him do that more. And they made him double down on what he was weak at. And I think that can destroy a kid's confidence. But if you work on what you're stronger and like delegate those other things, it could be a good way to achieve things. I talk about things like dyslexic millionaires or even billionaires because, as I said in part one, and as I've said in the past, it can be very inspirational for people to know about success stories, motivational figures. And on that note, I'd love to talk about how dyslexics could mentor and be role models for others. So some dyslexics who have achieved success in their chosen field could take others under their wing, especially younger people, as long as they sort of, I have to mention, you have to be careful of like child protection, safeguarding, as we call it here in the UK, and that kind of thing, child protection / safeguarding, so that you ensure that children are safe at the same time, hopefully all being well, but hopefully it'll benefit all possible dyslexics. And again, similar for those other groups I talked about. Trying to repeat myself too much if I can help it, but a while back, the BDA, the British Dyslexia Association, had a mentorship program, but I don't know if it's still running. But yeah, I think it'd be cool for dyslexics who have done well in their chosen field, whether that's business, entrepreneurship, and that kind of thing, or whatever it might be, to mentor others, especially those who want to go into those fields, like Steve McQueen did with two aspiring dyslexic movie directors. So yeah, different fields. I think it'd be cool if they mentored, basically to have a mentorship program, to put it simply, for especially for dyslexics, and it could be similar for those other groups I talk about, disabled people generally, for instance. So yeah, I'll try and say this one more time, but dyslexics, dyspraxics, dysgraphics, dyscalculics, and disabled people generally. So I suppose there's kind of 5 groups. Number 13, try not to think too much about myself, but as it's a first, I think like looking after number 1 and all that kind of thing. And as it's a point number 13 as well. I think of like how I think what makes me me, without wanting to be too narcissistic about it or think too much about myself, be too self-centered or whatever, selfish, I'm sure, or self-centered. But so yeah, how much of me is due to my mental health problems? How much is it due to my dyslexia, dyspraxia, or whatever other conditions or whatever? As I said in part 1, I wonder if I have dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. I did try not to mention this point, but yeah, dysgraphia or whatnot. I'd love to take a test for all those things, and maybe one day in some of my videos, maybe next November, for neurodiversity November, I'll see if I do have those things and try and do an official test live on my videos. I think that'd be quite interesting. But as ever, I'd love to know what you think. Hopefully, it won't be too harsh, and see what we could do to benefit Italian football. Talking about being selfish again, just like I talked about in part one. But another thing is, I think of 13 as like a scary number or negative number generally or whatever. But trying to turn it into a positive. I talked about dyslexic movie producers and directors and whatnot, dyslexics in the movie industry, and maybe even the music industry. I've seen like scary lyrics and that kind of thing. So I wonder what dyslexics can come up with, what we can make if we work together. I hope I don't jinx it in point number 13, but yeah, I've seen somewhere they make, not dyslexic specifically, but there's some with like music with scary lyrics in their songs. And I wonder what dyslexics could do with that with our imagination. And I suppose some of that comes from our fears. Like I'm easily scared, so I think I would relate more to horror movies and thrillers. My imagination goes that kind of way. Whereas I'm aromantic, as I said before, so I wouldn't really be very good, I don't think, at making soppy or romantic movies. Well, I could probably be soppy in my own way, or whatever, cheesy or corny or whatever. But yeah, something else I was going to say, I'm trying to remember as well. But yeah, dyslexics making scary movies. I think that's one of the things I was going to say. I know that was one of the things I was going to say. Yeah, even scary music, lyrics, and that kind of thing. But also addressing some of the issues we face, some of the weaknesses of said conditions that I mentioned before. Some of the issues that disabled people generally go through. Some people might not class dyslexia as a disability. People look at it in different ways. Some see it as a disability, and some people see it as a curse or negative, and they feel burdened by it, and some see it as a punishment or whatever, punishment from above maybe, or things like that, and others see it as a gift, and some see it as a bit of both. I'm probably in the latter category. I see that it can be a pain in the neck, and it can have its weaknesses. It's not all good, but at the same time there are some good things about it, like I say, think outside the box. I hope I don't jinx it, as I say, it's taking point of 13, but yeah, so I'm just trying to think if I've covered everything. So yeah, scary movies, our weaknesses, thinking about myself. I don't want to be too selfish, because it's point number 13. But yeah, and that kind of thing, some of the challenges we face, and then my selfish dreams about going to Italy in the future. So again, hope I don't jinx this in point number 13, but by mentioning point number 13. But I'd love to know from dyslexics out there, would you be happy, and maybe even dyscalculics, dysgraphics, or even dyspraxics? Like, I suppose people with physical disabilities it would be hard to see that happening. But people with mental disabilities, maybe mental illnesses, could get involved. But would you be happy to go and travel to Italy and share ideas on how we could improve Italian football through our creative, out-the-box thinking and ideas? I don't know if I've heard that one. But moving on, number 14, one of the strengths we have, though, talking about mind strengths, MIND strengths, again, an acronym, and things like is that we are problem solvers, dyslexics. A lot of time we can solve many problems. And I think if we network together, we can solve even more problems together. As they say, a problem solved is a problem halved, and inventions, I know I mentioned earlier that, like they say, necessity is the mother of all inventions. So I wonder what dyslexics could invent and what problems we could solve with when we make, if we make and create things like AI, apps, robotics, and things like that together. And when we work together, I think we could achieve a lot, and hopefully make it nice and easy. I'm a bit lazy. I love it nice and easy. Well, I say maybe I should change it, as I said in the past, like to smart work instead of hard work or whatever, or instead of laziness as well. So somewhere in the middle. But yeah, probably everyone has to work hard at some point, I guess. Even me, unfortunately. But yeah, I wonder what problems we could solve together, and what we could achieve. Number 15. So even when I mentioned like about, I hope to talk throughout this month about like the Dyslexic Millionaires Network, the Dyslexic Billionaires Network, and that kind of thing. I wonder if there are any dyscalculic millionaires or even billionaires, and or even dyspraxic millionaires or even billionaires. I think if you struggle with maths, it would be very difficult. If you struggle to take actions and things like that, which as dyspraxics maybe do sometimes or not. So or most of the time, or whatever, then it can be very difficult. But it'd be interesting, I think, to find if there are any dyspraxics or millionaires or even billionaires and dyscalculics who might have found a way, like networking, collaborating, or whatever, and that kind of thing, to become millionaires or even billionaires. But I often mention, really, what's wrong with my stomach? I don't know why my stomach's wrong with my stomach. I think that sometimes it still rumbles when I'm hungry, but or eating, so maybe it's food digesting. But anyway, what time for my stomach to rumble? Yeah, sometimes that's like some video. Sorry, going quite way off track, but it's like having a heckler or something like that. Or I remember I was sitting around the table once, and my sister was there, and I was eating, and my stomach seemed to make a noise like "mummy, mum," and we just both laughed. But anyway, so, nice life story, or maybe not. But yeah, I'd love to support dyslexics with that ambition. But if I could create like a dyslexic millionaires network, or even a billionaires network, dyslexic billionaires network, my favourite, it would help me to solve a lot of problems. And I've talked about it in the past, and I would use a lot of that money to support, like what I call my 5 causes of benefiting Tamil, Celtic, libertarianism, people from former colonies, and that kind of thing, tackling poverty, alleviating suffering, that kind of thing. And it reminds me of when people say, like, when you plan your day in the beginning, at the start of the day, basically, if you think about, like, what task could I do now that would make all the other tasks I've got much easier, and help me to do them. So even if it's writing a positive list or something, I don't know, something, thinking positively, thinking of a positive list, or just thinking what you have to do for the day, and then what your reward could be at the end of it, or whatever, or what actions you could take today to make your future better, and things like that. And the reason why I mention that is just to clarify that. So if I did create a dyslexic billionaires network, and it made loads of money, it made even trillions, then it would help with a lot of the other problems I have. Like, it would solve a lot of problems, because that network would have the money to support those 5 causes, to pay for travel. I'd love to have 10% equity in what I call billionaires networks. Unfortunately, I didn't get around to discussing those in November, but I wonder, I might discuss them in December, if not, maybe, hopefully in January. I'll discuss like billionaires networks, ASAP, basically, preferably either in December or in January at least. Yeah, it would solve a lot of those problems. As I say, with my interconnected reasoning, it reminds me of, like I say, if you start your day, or even plan the day before, I think, what are the things I want to do tomorrow? What are the things I want to get done tomorrow? What are my main priorities? But if you plan and probably don't take on too much, like me, like in terms of thinking too much, or thinking too many ideas or things to do, and you just take a few things on and just do them as well as possible. But yeah, if you like win your day, then you can plan things out a lot easier. And yeah, if you take on the 1 or 2 things that will make all your other tasks or things you want to do basically a lot easier. And this reminds me of things like the billionaires network and things like that. So if I achieve that with momentum as well, maybe more people would believe in my ideas more, or things like that. I'd be able to invest in those things, encourage dyslexic billionaires to invest in those things. Even just having a dyslexic billionaires network, I think, could inspire people. Just like as I jokingly say, mere millionaires network. But yeah, having the funding to invest in those sorts of things, and again, people saying that I believe this guy can achieve things, even though we doubted him. So if I wanted to do the other charitable work or things like that, it would work. And it probably sounds like a really greedy and selfish idea, as I've said before in the past, but really, it's just something, an idea I had a long time ago. I'd love to see my curiosity, my dyslexic curiosity, perhaps, and should call mad. Curiosity makes me want to see what would happen. But maybe the mystery would be gone. Sometimes the unknown can be more exciting, but then I could just be dreaming all the time and maybe have lots of regrets on it. Perhaps. So moving on, number 16, I'd love to know what some dyslexic people's dreams are, and what are the best ways to motivate and support and empower dyslexics. Number 17, there's a lot of imagination with dyslexia. I'm sure there was a point I was going to mention. I'm trying to remember so I don't forget. But yeah, I say, if you take the eye away from imagination, you could say imagination Mondays, and that kind of thing. So just a quirky little thing I think of. But on that note, I'd love to see a way where dyslexics can somehow come together to brainstorm ideas and network together and put all our ideas into practice, hopefully to make the world a better place, not just for ourselves but for others as well, disabled people, poor people, homeless people included obviously, and victims of war and all sorts of things. Hopefully we can make the world a better place using our ideas and creativity, out of the box thinking, our imagination basically, and that kind of thing. And I'd love for us to be able to find a way to get our imaginations onto screen, to network together in making music and movies and things like that. I said that in the wrong order, but anyway. But yeah, I'm sure there was something I was going to say, and I'll probably be kicking myself later if I remember it suddenly. But moving on, number 18, I hope by the end of this month I can show lots of positives to conditions like dyslexia and those others I mentioned, and make the world a better place for disabled people. I suppose I could have said in point number 11, like change the world, including for disabled people. I might mention that. But I suppose in part one I could have said like about having my own creative rooms. I hope to do that ASAP, where I can do my writings and videos and things like that in peace and quiet and focus as much as possible on them and write as much as I can and make as many videos as I can when and wherever I have permission. So I'd love to do as much writing as possible, and that could be like something that can keep me occupied with a purpose, that kind of thing. Although it may or may not work practically in the way I envisage it. Another big word for me perhaps. But number 19, again, people with dyslexia and those other conditions I mentioned still have lots of challenges, so it's not all rosy, but hopefully we can achieve a lot more working together. And number 20, I hope to do as much as I can with the time I have, and hopefully focus on achieving things and maybe even exceed expectations. As I say, dyslexics are either too early or too late. So sometimes I have a lame joke about I'm dyslexic, I need extra time and that kind of thing. I hope to organise my time as much as possible. And on that note, peace and love, and I'm out.